Hello and welcome to Google Apps Unscripted. This is our renamed Google AppScript office hours, where we kind of cover news, events related to AppScript, and answer your questions live. So if you do happen to be watching live, you can go to developers.google.com, click on the live link, and join us in a Hangout. And later in the show, we'll be taking live questions. With me today, Kalyan Reddy, another member of the AppScript team.
Hello, everyone.
And so this is the start of a new year for Google AppScript. It's been a while since we did one of our GDLs, one of these Google Developer Live episodes, and we have a little bit to cover. So I'd say the first piece of news is that we are launching a whole bunch of new GDL content. We had a lot of success last year. You were on a couple shows, right?
Yeah.
I think you did charts one.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, so that was very popular, actually. I remember seeing the view count. A lot of people like the charts episodes.
And we had a couple of other ones on Tulio and some other cool integration with other applications.
Yeah, so we've been trying to bring you guys a lot of interesting content. And so we've kind of done some work to kind of rebrand a little bit. So as I just already mentioned, this is kind of like Google AppScript office hours rebranded, called Google Apps Unscripted. And as you can tell, we are not very scripted at the moment. But we also have two more really cool episodes coming up. So the first is on February 12th. That's next week on Tuesday. We are going to be holding State of the Script 2013. We're riding on the back of State of the Union address here in the United States, or maybe they're riding our back, I guess, depending upon which you think is more important. And so we're going to be talking with the product manager of Google AppScript, Saurabh Gupta, who works with us here in New York, and he's going to be sitting down with our colleague Arun Nagarajan and kind of discussing, where AppScript has been this past year, where we're at, and where he sees the future of AppScript going.
Yeah, so it's a really good idea for you guys to tune in if you're curious about, some of the new things, what the direction is, to sync up with the PM.
Yeah, I think it's really, how often do you really get to speak to the product manager of or get to at least hear the message directly from a product manager here at Google. And so that's, I think, a really exciting one that's coming up soon. So, put it in your calendars. We actually have, for all of our GDLs, a Google Plus event set up. So if you follow me on Google Plus or you follow Kalyan, just head over to Google Plus and check out some of the events that we've shared, and you can actually follow it there and get some information. The other one we have coming up next week, it's a week chock full with good episodes, is another edition of what we're calling AppScript Crash Course. So this Crash Course series that we're putting together, so far Arun has been knocking them out, and he's doing a great job, is kind of picking a Google AppScript technology. In this upcoming episode, it's ScriptDB, and kind of just doing a really kind of like a mixture of introductory and deep dive content.
Yeah, right in the middle.
Yeah, so it's like, if you've used it before, there's still a lot of worth there because he kind of shows some really cool integrations and kind of some best practices. But if you're also brand new to some of these technologies, it's a really great way to get a kind of holistic overview about what they do. So Arun did one a couple weeks ago, maybe last week, I forget.
I think it was last week.
Last week. It felt like a year ago. But he did one which was on the content service, which is a really powerful service that allows you to serve up JSON, XML, RSS, and kind of write app scripts that produce other machine consumable code, which, as you can imagine, is very powerful. I think he showed some really cool integrations. I forget you remember the ones now? I'm spacing.
Yeah.
Unscripted. But anyway, go back onto YouTube, the Google Developers channel, and go check out that previous episode. You can get a sense of what this Crash Course series is like.
And so basically, you could read through some of the tutorials we have. That they will cover some of these tricks. But it's a good idea to tune in, kind of get a holistic kind of view about how to use this. Here are the recommended things. Here's best practices. This is how we can use it in a couple of examples. Just to tie things together.
Yeah, that's the thing, is there's so many pieces in AppScript, and sometimes it's hard to kind of fit them together.
Exactly.
And so Arun does a really good job of kind of these really great demos that kind of show off what's possible. And he puts all the source code up on GitHub afterwards, so you can start tinkering and playing around with it yourself. So do check those out. Go to Google+, check out the events that we have there, and hope you tune in for those. So just to be clear, this show is going to be live call-in. You can, not calling, but you can join on Google Hangout. That's on the the developers.google.com page for this. These other episodes, these other shows we're doing, they're more kind of just more about delivering information. So we're not having a Hangout for those. So if you want to join a Hangout, if you want to interact with us, Google Apps Unscripted is the place to go for that.
This is your event.
All right, cool. So that's some of the upcoming events, but one of the things we have to talk about on the show is release notes, and we've had a lot of release notes recently.
Oh yeah. So if we can check this out here, go to the release notes. Okay, how far back do we have to go? All the way in January?
Yeah, I don't know how far back we want to go, but let's kind of maybe skim through some of the more interesting things that we've done in the past couple releases. Yeah.
So if you had some problems with the time zones. That's kind of a bug that cropped up, but we did work around it. We did re-implement the existing functionality, so all of your scripts should be good to go now.
Yeah, remember there was kind of a number of different time zone related issues across different services,
right.
And one of our engineers kind of took up the charge of trying to squash them all down. So he put a lot of time into fixing how time zones work, getting rid of some of the edge cases. So we did commit a number of different changes there. I think there are still maybe a couple open in the issue tracker for time zone related issues. So do kind of continue to bring those to us. But we are taking an effort to kind of stamp those down. But time zones, they're tricky.
Yeah.
So we also added some cool features too. So I mean, if you look through our release notes that Kellyanne has up here, the number of bug fixes, which you can see are all those issue. They're pretty large. We've been trying to squash bugs, and the team has been doing a great job of going through and putting extra effort on killing bugs. Right?
Mm-hmm.
No one likes bugs. It's always really sad when you put a lot of effort into building something and then hit this bug and you're like, either waste an hour or you realize you have to redo what you did. So they are putting a lot of time into the bugs, but simultaneously they're also still continuing to add features. What people love about AppScript, especially me, is that pretty much anything you want to do, there's kind of a service for it, right? Gmail app has a service, Drive, docs list service.
And they're so easy to use.
Yeah, it's kind of this ultimate pocket knife of utility. And so they've been working to continue to expand that. And so you'll see some issues here, some entries in the release notes around enhancing the clock trigger builder on January 17th release down there, yeah. So that was an extra method that was added in, just kind of a convenience to make it a little bit easier to build these kind of one-off triggers. And so that was a really good one. And then, we've also had some in the one above there. So one of the things in issue 286 was actually a feature request on the 24th, which was to add a follow redirects method to URL fetch as apps fetch method. So essentially, I think the way it used to work is that when you use URL fetch to request a URL, if it was doing redirects, the server that you were fetching from, you would always follow those redirects and you couldn't stop it. And sometimes people wanted to actually get the intermediary HTTP request that had the error, the redirect code in it, and pull out some information.
Right.
And so with this follow redirects advanced argument, you can now set it to false to kind of prevent that behavior.
So it makes the method more powerful. You have the option to get exactly what you want.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then right above it, you can see that we, for UI app, did a little bit of work so that you can now do mail to anchors. So a lot of people want to do that kind of old-fashioned style mail to email address that when you click a link will pop open your default email client with that email address pre-populated. So we didn't have that supported UI app before, but now we do. So if you want to put a little link in your app saying something's horribly broken, email SortUp Gupta our PM directly, you can do that now, although he may not respond to every request. And then I think in our 31st release up above, we have another feature that we added, which is kind of cool, was a Spreadsheet app.openByURL. That's right there at the top. And what's great about that one is that there were a lot of users who, or you wanted to create some sort of script that said, okay, just enter your spreadsheet URL here, and I'll do some processing on it, right? But then you needed to do some regex work to find the key parameter and pull it out. I actually did this in a couple scripts that I wrote. And it's just it's a little bit of extra work that's kind of annoying. So now what you can do is, if you have your user just paste in a spreadsheet URL, we'll figure out which spreadsheet ID that is and open it up for you without you needing to do any extra parsing.
And even for yourself, when you're creating these quick scripts, you don't want to extract the key and then copy and paste it to a variable and everything. This makes it much more easy, much more polished.
Yeah, so that's kind of a fun little feature that's added in there. You can see we also did a little more work on the clock trigger builder with time zones. Time zones.
So yeah, this another time zone issue. But this one, the problem was that it was actually defaulting to the Pacific time. But now we've fixed it so that it does respect the time zone that you've enabled in your script.
Yeah. And if you haven't done a lot with AppScript before, or especially within time zones, it can get confusing because a spreadsheet has a time zone. A script has a time zone. Your Google Calendars have their own time zone. Our servers have theirs. So we try to keep it all separate and make sense and try to make it interoperate as best as possible. But there definitely are these little cases where if you take a time zone from here or a date from here and pass it over there, like what does it mean? Which time zone are you talking about? It can get a little tricky. So we're hammering those out.
All right.
And then one of the ones here you'll see in January 31st release was the ability for the code editor's find dialog to search through multiple files in your AppScript project. Mm-hmm. This is really cool because a lot of times I'll know I have some key or some variable that I know I need to replace maybe in a bunch of places, or I didn't know where I put it. And so before, find and replace would only work on your single file, but now it works on multiples.
And this is really handy because users now are having larger scripts, more complicated scripts, so they're breaking out the logic into different files as you should to tackle the complexity. And this kind of enables you to develop more easily. Mm.
Yeah, I mean, so the editor we have in AppScript, it's obviously not as full featured as an Eclipse or Sublime Text. There's a popular one here in the office. It's not quite up to that level of complexity yet. But we are working on constantly improving the experience because we do know that although sometimes you write an AppScript and you're just trying to get something done quickly and you don't need to have as many advanced features. But a lot of people writing app scripts today are doing very complex projects, yep. Big web apps or big workflow systems. And so having these extra features really can save a lot of time.
Definitely.
All right. I think that's anything else with the release notes you wanted to highlight, Kalyan?
I think those are the main things, and as you can see, a ton of bug fixes. So definitely keep on bringing them up on the issue tracker. That's the major source for how we can find out about these things. We'll triage them, and then we'll get them fixed as soon as we can.
That's great. All right, cool. So I think that brings us to the question and answer portion of the show.
Yeah.
Apps Unscripted. So we have some questions here on the Google moderator page. And it looks like we have some Hangout participants as well. So let's see who's on the Hangout first and if we have any live questions. Hello and welcome to Apps Unscripted. Anybody? Anybody there have a question?
Or just want to say hi?
Yeah, or just want to say hi.
I want to say hi.
Oh, hey!
And I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, my name is Harry Oosterveen from Netherlands. My question is, when you want to cooperate on a project, on a script, we've managed so far to do it only when you both log in under the same name.
Mm. Yeah.
So it's apparently only the owner of the script can run it in development mode.
Yeah, so that is a known problem that I know actually Kalyan ran into with our colleague Arun. They were trying to collaborate on a script, and there are definitely some kind of problems around collaborating on a script today. One of the ones you mentioned is that if you're deploying it as a web app, only the owner can deploy it as the web app or update the version that's being deployed. And even if you're an editor, you can't do that today. It's only the owner. So that is something that we've raised before with the engineering team, and I think we should push even harder on that because collaboration is something that's very important at Google. Google Docs, that's the main selling point, is having two little cursors fly around the dock at the same time.
And it's something you kind of expect from the platform as a whole, right? So that's a great feature. That collaboration is just baked into so many of our services.
So I think we'd really love to bring more of that to Google Apps Script. I think that the way that the editor is built today, we may not be able to get to that exact point that Google Docs has, where two cursors are flying around the screen simultaneously. But I think we can definitely improve the experience around deploying web apps and around even just editing different files within the same project at the same time. Yep. So I'll make a note right now to kind of bring that topic up again in some of our meetings, because I definitely want to make sure that collaboration is something that we do support in AppScript.
Yep. And also you might have experienced some problems with the revision history isn't as fine-grained as something you would expect in like spreadsheets or documents. We're looking into that, and we're looking into making the experience much better for users.
Yeah. Yeah, I think AppScript has kind of been growing from a product that one person used to create one small thing to now, it is a team kind of platform sometimes. So we'll have to grow into some of these features, I think.
Yeah.
That's great.
Anyone else?
Yeah, or another question from Harry. All right, great. So it looks like stay on the line, guys. We'll keep your audio up. If you have a question, feel free to jump in between. And if people are watching and don't feel like joining live to ask a question, you're more than welcome to go to our Google moderator that's embedded in the developers.google.com page for this event. All right. So let's go to the moderator. So we have some questions here. I got them up on my screen, but you don't need to see them. I'll just read them out loud. So the first one we have here is a question from Jonathan in London. He says, will the number of scripts that can simultaneously be authorized, will that be increased? They're doing some really useful work around Google Apps Script and triggers, and the current authorization limit workaround that they're using is to trigger a single script with other scripts used as libraries, and it's a bit messy. So there is a problem today. The problem is that we have limits around the number of app script projects that can authorize against some of our services. So I don't know if you notice in app script, sometimes when you do an authorization screen that pops up, right, when you're running your script for the first time or deploying it as a web app, you get a screen that says, here's all the different things we're going to use, hit authorize, right? Then sometimes you'll get to a second screen. That second screen is actually the standard Google OAuth screen. And there you're configuring some access to specific services. So I know Gmail is one that requires this.
Right.
You're saying Sites requires it in some cases.
Certain types of interactions where you need authorization with Sites will prompt you for that as well. And there are other examples.
So any scripts that require that secondary prompt, unfortunately, it's kind of built into the system right now that there's a limit, which is, I think, somewhere around 15 or 20, I forget the exact number, totals that can be authorized at any one time. And if you authorize a new one, it'll kick out an old one. And I think that's probably what Jonathan is running into here. We are actually actively working on changing the back end to make this go away. We don't like it, you don't like it, and 15 is an arbitrarily small number. So we are definitely working on getting rid of this. It's, as you can imagine, the Google systems and the Google infrastructure, everything's tied together in very complicated ways. So we are working and switching out some components to make this go away. And I don't know exactly when it'll be complete, but it is something we're working on. All right, so let's go to another question here in the moderator. So another one is, this is Jean-Marc in Belgium asking, where are the kind of the servers that store data for ScriptDB or even Google Drive docs? Where are those servers located? Will it be possible to locate them exclusively in Europe, like Google App Engine does? I do not believe we have control over this today.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, so I do know that the intersection of technology and government can lead to some strange things sometimes. And I do know that in some countries, depending upon what you're doing, if it's government-related services or systems, your data needs to be located physically within certain country boundaries or certain geopolitical boundaries. And so I think that the reference here is that Google App Engine, I'm not familiar, but I'll take their word on it, has the ability to say, make sure that the servers you spin up are only located in a certain country. For Google Apps Script, we don't have that ability.
And it's kind of like a hidden feature, right? Like a lot of these things, we simplify these underlying systems just so that people can get in, write a script, do what they want to do. Yeah. And we try to hide this complexity. And it's kind of like a balance on how much you do want to show and how much users should worry about, on a regular basis.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough thing. Like for AppScript, we're trying to be simple. We're trying to be fast. If everyone who wanted to run a quick script against their Gmail account had to choose a server farm, right? It definitely hurts the experience. So yeah. I can understand where you're coming from. I think probably, though, it's not something you're going to see from AppScript, at least in the short term. Where we're trying to be is in a place that's not quite as complex as that. And so, if Google App Engine meets your needs, I'd say keep going with that for now.
Yeah.
All right, let me just toss it over to the Hangout one more time. Is anybody there? Another question they want to chime in with?
Yeah, quick request.
Sure.
I'm a new AppScript user, so thank you very much. I love using it. Could maybe a better documentation on what values are passed to functions embedded in a spreadsheet? Because let's say you're trying to rewrite, say, the sum function. You could take individual values, cells, a range, or a combination of all three, and that creates some fairly complicated arguments to that function. that you're trying to write. So it's a little unclear how to say you were trying to write a version of the sum function in Sheets that used, say, geometric mean or some other math.
Okay.
You'd have to write it properly, you have to handle a large variety of arguments.
I see.
And so the documentation is a little sparse on that.
Yeah, no, that's a really good pointer. We have, I don't know if you've probably seen our documentation now. There's a lot there, and we're actually working with our technical writer.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we're working with our technical writer now to kind of work on not just producing more, but really refining what we have, right? So as you found out, like, there's a lot of information, but sometimes some of that basic information can get lost in the sauce, or isn't the first place you'd look, or maybe isn't there at all. Just at the top of my head, I happen to know that I think in most cases a range will get sent down as an array of values, versus a single cell will get sent down as the value itself. If it's a date, it'll get sent down as a date.
That's what I found, but I had to find that by experimentation.
Exactly.
Right,
and
right.
Trying to write several versions of a function, one of which worked on horizontal ranges but not vertical, and one that worked on 2D ranges but not 1D.
Right.
So there are a little special cases. So maybe some better examples would be helpful.
That's a really good tip.
For new users.
Yeah, no, that's a great tip.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're one of the things we're also talking about now with our documentation is trying to streamline it towards specific users and specific use cases, right? So, we know that a really large segment of our users are people who want to do custom functions. And we don't really have a really great kind of start to finish track for them where they can go from nothing to being a custom functions expert. So we want to make it so that if that's what you're interested in, we kind of take you start to finish a little bit more, instead of right now we're kind of like, welcome and good luck. So we're going to refine that, and that's really great feedback. Thank you. I didn't catch your name, by the way.
Oh, Neil Hendon, thank you.
Hey, thanks, Neil. All right, great. Since we're on the Hangout, does anybody else feel like jumping in? Question, comment?
Yeah, this is Grant from Cleveland.
Hello.
So the question I have is there a way to centrally manage an app script that goes out to multiple copies of a spreadsheet? The use case I have is that I've got a template spreadsheet that's with app script built into it, and all of the employees here would have to make a copy of that, and they use the app script every day. But if I need to make a change to that or improve it in any way, I have to go in manually into each individual spreadsheet and change the code there. So is there a way to manage it centrally so you can push out the changes to all of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's actually one that we get a lot too.
So would libraries help in this situation?
Libraries is one way that can help. So one of the people I reference a lot in my post is one of our power users here in New York that we powwow with sometimes is Andrew Stillman. He works for New Visions, which works with the public schools here in New York. And he uses AppScript a lot. And he has this exact same problem where you are one author, but then there's a lot of users, right? And how do you, as the author, be able to make updates without having each user have to make a new copy of a sheet or copy-paste code? We don't have a perfect solution today. One of the things that helps is libraries that Kalyan mentioned. A library allows you to write one script and then kind of import it into others. And so the only caveat there, and the thing that makes it imperfect for this particular scenario, is that we have a concept of versions on libraries. So this is good in that if you had a library you were dispersing to many people, and let's say you changed a function around, you changed the behavior, you changed the order of the parameters, it would be bad if what your change broke everybody else who wasn't expecting it all at once. So instead what we do is we kind of snapshot your library in a period of time. And when someone uses your library, they don't just use the library, they use a specific version. So in this scenario, you could have all of these spreadsheets have scripts that use the library. And then when you push that new version of the library out, you still have to inform your users to go into the script editor, go to the libraries menu, and change the version from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, et cetera.
It's just a little bit, I don't want to say cleaner, but it's a little bit easier for the user than making a copy and then dealing with all that other stuff.
It is an improvement.
Yeah, it's a little bit better. But
For this?
Say that again?
Yeah, can I share my solution for this?
Oh, sure, go ahead.
You can start with a spreadsheet and add a script to the spreadsheet. But the alternative is to start with a plain script, which you share with all your users, and then you set the ID or the URL of the spreadsheet in one of the user properties. So everybody has his own spreadsheet, but you all use the same copy of the script.
And so how do you deploy that script?
I have a script which works a bit like that, yeah.
But do they have a user interface, or are they just running them from the script editor?
The script is a way where you add a tag to Gmail, and then it will export it to Evernote.
Gotcha.
And the first time you run it, it creates a spreadsheet where the transactions are logged.
Mm-hmm.
Then you remember that ID.
Yeah. So
properties.
So yeah. So
I have no clue how many people are using it. Quite a lot. But it's all the same copy. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's actually a great way that a great alternative, and one that we've recommended sometimes in the past, which is that instead of thinking of it as each spreadsheet has its own script, there's just one script that operates on multiple spreadsheets. So it's kind of flipping on its head, kind of the paradigm here. And we've seen ways in the past where you could, like, for instance, create one script that you deploy as a web app. And so instead of somebody in the spreadsheet accessing a menu that pops up a dialog, they just type in a URL, or probably it's too long to type, but they take that URL and it shows them a UI where they say, which spreadsheet would you like me to operate on? And they can configure it from one central location, and then that central location reaches out to all the spreadsheets it wants to manipulate. It's kind of a little harder to wrap your head around if you've been used to kind of building scripts inside a spreadsheet. Yeah, the container bound. But it does kind of fix this problem. But anyway, it's a problem that's still open. We still have people wanting a better solution, and we're still talking about better solutions. So we hope to keep coming up with more alternatives to libraries and to this that would make it so that people in your situation have an easier way to do updates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have shared a blog post as a link to the script I used.
Oh, great. All right. So let's just I want to make sure we get through at least one more, two more on the moderator. So if you're on the Hangout, just wait a second. I want to make sure, because people did vote on the moderator, and we actually have some good votes on here. So one of the ones that voted very highly was from Alan in, didn't say where. He said, are there any examples of using doPost that can read non-form submitted content, such as application JSON? All the examples I've seen assume form submissions, or they don't need to access the body. Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I think the doPost we have today is specifically, and for you don't know, this is a way that your script can react to a post request instead of just a GET request. But I think the doPost today does expect kind of URL form encoded, I'm assuming. It parses the data that comes in to the post request and puts it into the e.parameters, or I guess it puts it into the parameters field of the event object. Anyway, you can read more about this in our documentation, but I believe it probably does have to be URL form encoded and not just application JSON. If you have a really compelling use case for this,
I'm not actually sure. I remember dealing with this a little bit ago, but I don't have it on the top of my head. I'll have to go back and look at it.
Okay, we can dig into this a little bit more. Yeah. That was my gut feeling, but I'm not actually 100% sure. But if you have a really compelling use case, like you have some integration that relies on this, or there's something really cool you could do if you had this, open a feature request, kind of give us some background about why it's useful, what you use it for, and we can take that to the team.
Yep.
Great. And then one more from Alan that got voted up was, what are best practices for debugging inside of a do-get do-post? That's very interesting.
So one thing is, if your do-get has the parameter e or whatever, you can't run it in the script editor, but oftentimes you can remove that just for test purposes and actually run it within the script editor if you're not relying on parameters coming in from the GET request. So you can kind of, go through your script and make sure that all the services you're calling are returning the information you want, and you're processing it the way you want.
Right. Yeah, actually what I've done in the past around that is I've left my do-get the same, accepting an event parameter. And let's say I'm relying on certain parameters inside there. I'll create a test function that just creates a fake event object, populating some parameters, and then pass that fake event object into a call to do-get. And then allows me in the script editor to kind of let it do the processing, and I can kind of like test out what happens, log certain messages, maybe even debug. Now, if you want to actually test a live page, with clicking and all that, it's obviously not going to work. You can't run the debugger when you're in the middle of a live request. But you can do some things like do logging is one thing. If you use the logger service, help you kind of get some information as you're going. That's some basic debugging. Occasionally, if you need to collect even more data, I'll do some logging to a spreadsheet if I'm having a real big problem and the logger doesn't hold enough information. But I don't know if there's really a you can't, unlike other, I know some web platforms, I think Apache's, Tomcats, I think you can do live tying of the debugger into the actual running
So you can actually simulate the request coming in and then
Or
stop it.
Yeah,
and then service.
exactly. So I don't think you can't do that with AppScript. So if you're really used to some advanced debugging, we're not quite there yet. But if there's something that you find is lacking with the debugging techniques, we do have a page in our documentation around troubleshooting. So if you think that we don't cover DoGet enough there today, open a feature request for us, and we'll enhance our documentation a little bit there.
Definitely.
All right, I think we are just about out of time. Let's throw it to the Hangout one more time, just because I want to make sure we don't leave people hanging. So is there anybody else on the Hangout with a question? Yes.
I've got one.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
A quickie, and it is very likely outside the scope. I just started using Python to access spreadsheets, and of course, the first thing I ran into was inability to find any of the Python documentation, because you all moved everything except the Python documentation. And then when I did find the Python documentation and examples, the last update to it was, I think, sometime in 2010. Mm-hmm. I was able to get it running, and it runs fine, but the current example does not support, I guess, OAuth. So I was able to get it running with a single authorization account, but I could not make it run with a two-factor authentication account. And at least the example that I showed, that I got, called directly into a complete Google library, so there was nothing to substitute.
I see.
So it left me with saying, okay, well, I can figure this out for plain auth accounts, but I can't figure it out for
two-factor
dual auth account, because it's not something that it's telling me to put this client on my side. It's something that it's calling into.
Right. Yeah, so unfortunately, AppScript, we don't deal with that particular product. I mean, I can talk to some of the guys who I think would know where those documentation ended up and see if they can help fix that. Yeah. As a quick aside, I actually do happen to know a way you can use a two-factor account, and it's called the application-specific passwords. So if you have a two-factor account, one of the things you can configure in your Google account settings are application-specific passwords.
I'll give that a shot.
Yeah, they kind of act just like as if you had a single password in the past. And so you don't need to, you can just feed that in where you would feed in a single password, and then you don't need to worry about the whole kind of the one-time password system at all.
Yeah, that unfortunately that has some other complications in terms of having to be continuously recognized as the same thing.
Well, unfortunately, we can't help you too much more there, but
I thought I would probably.
Doesn't hurt to ask. Why not? All right. Before we wrap up, any last questions? All right. Well, we'll be back again next month. We're going to try to do these monthly now. So we did them, I think, a lot more frequently in the past, these question and answers. But it's a lot better when we have a good attendance like we had today. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Yeah. So we'll be holding one of these next month. So if you have any questions, in the meantime, ask them on Stack Overflow. That's where we do question and answer on AppScript. We actually have a fairly new support page on our documentation that lists all the different ways you can get support, including Stack Overflow, how to file bugs, feature requests, go into a discussion, Google Plus community. So go to that page, check it out. If you have any questions, until then, Stack Overflow. Otherwise, we'll see you probably next month for another episode.
Yeah, and we'll definitely put the time and the link on our Plus pages. So subscribe to that, add it to your calendars.
Yeah,
and
follow us both on Google Plus, and you'll definitely get all the updates.
Yeah.
All right, thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks.